Alright, hello everybody. Today I have for you my top 19 of 2020. So I do have some book stats first, and also I do have a number of books here. I don't have all of them because some of them are still in my big stack to wrap up that I'm going to film tomorrow and hate myself. But I don't have, because I think I had like 2 DVDs that I could have shown you, but I didn't feel like digging them out. So we're just going to speedrun this kind of, because I'm just trying to get back in the habit of filming things at a more, timely manner. So, first up, we got some book stats. First up, I read 129 books in 2020. That came out to 38,409 pages. My average rating was 3.92. Male-female author split, I read 71 male authors and 60 female authors. By the way, don't do the math because I know some of it's wrong. We don't need to do it. That's a 55% to 47%. Which is actually a much more even split than I think I've ever had before. Normally I'm way skewed male, so that's kind of interesting. I read 109 white authors and 20 authors of color, so that's not so great. 84% to 16%. 103 straight authors, 24 authors somewhere on the LGBT spectrum. This can also work for main characters, so that is 80 to 19. I cried at 3 books, so a full 2% of my reading year. I read 71 adult books for 55%. 39 young adult books for 30%, and 19 children or middle grade books for 15%. I reread 28 books, that's 22%, and I read 101 new books for 78%. I read 108 fiction books and 24 nonfiction books for 84 to 19%. And the year that I most read from, so I split it up into first centuries until we got to the 1900s, then I went decades until we hit 2000s, and then I went by year. So what I read the most from was 2019, so that's 16 books for 12%. So now we've got our top 11 books. We got top 11 books, top 7 movies, and then my top album. The only thing is I can't have, this has to be the first year that I have read or watched the book or movie, and for the album it just can't be one that I've picked as a top album before. So first up, books. Number 11 is Becoming Superman by Michael Straczynski. This is a memoir of a writer who did a lot of like TV writing and stuff like that. I just really liked what he had to say about writing and everything. I just thought it gels so nicely with what I think about writing. So I really enjoyed it a lot. And it's a thick book, but it didn't feel like it. It's a fantastic read if you're looking for some new writer memoirs. Number 10, If It Bleeds by Stephen King. I actually read 3 new Stephen King books this year, or 3 new to me Stephen King books, but If It Bleeds was, I think, the best. It's a really fun novella collection. Not my favorite novella collection, but a really fun one. I really, really enjoyed like Mr. Harrigan's Phone and Life of Chuck and Rats, and even If It Bleeds, although I think the title story was probably my least favorite. It's a really fun one. It's honestly, it's just fantastic. I enjoyed it quite a bit. I'm excited for the new Stephen King that's supposed to be coming out this year. We've got 2 books coming out this year, and I am pumped. Number 9, we've got our first physical book, Night Film by Marisha Pessl. I am very behind on this one, but because everybody was reading it when it came out in like 2013. But what I really liked about this was not like the multimedia aspect, but it was just how much of a love letter it was to horror. Like that there's a part in here where he's like, the main character is stumbling through a bunch of horror sets, and it is just surreal and awesome. I enjoy it quite a bit. I also like all the side characters. It's just a really fun book that I just enjoyed reading quite a bit. Number 8 is actually technically like a novella. That is mcglue by Atesha Mosfeh. This is my first Atesha Mosfeh. I don't really know how to pronounce her name. It's my first book by her. It's about this guy who like he's super drunk, but he like kind of wakes up and he's like being told that he murdered his best friend, and there's a lot going on, and it's just very voicey, very fun. I need to read more from her. This is my first thing I've ever read from her, and it was fantastic. Then number 7, Full Tilt by Neal Shusterman. This is one that I opened up and I immediately knew I was just gonna fucking love it. Like, I love how it's written. I love all the little sets. I love the atmosphere. It smells good. This is one that I opened it up and I knew that I had to annotate it. So I did annotate it, not very much, but there were quite a few moments in here where I was scribbling around in there, which that is generally when I know that I'm going to like really enjoy a book. But I definitely really love this one. Number 6, Tietam Brown by Mick Foley. Yes, the WWE star. This is a book about a kid who, he's got this he's like 16 or so, 14 to 16, somewhere in there, and his dad is an alcoholic and just like really just wild, crazy out there, and he is trying to get his girlfriend, and his dad is maybe trying to fall in love again, and it's just really interesting. It's very voicey again. Like, I read a lot of really voicey books this year, and all of them like really impressed me. But I don't know, there's just something about the way it was written. I think I read it in mostly one sitting. I just like sat down and just fucking went. I enjoyed it quite a bit. It was like, obviously it was my 6th favorite book of the year, but definitely underrated. I think this guy, he did a good thing when he started writing books. Number 5, All the Ugly and Wonderful Things by Bryn Greenwood. This one had a bunch of controversy when it came out because it's about a pedophile, but it's about this little girl, and she is in a very abusive like drug home, and there's this big motorcycle guy who was like the first person who's really being kind to her, and they fall in love. She's about 7 when they meet. He's in his 20s. So it's like, it got a lot of controversy when it first came out, but it is very well written, and it is, honestly, if a book can make me go between and no, it's probably a good one. Number 4, I read Leverage by Joshua C. Cohen, which is about this male gymnast, and talks a lot about like hazing situations and male rape and stuff like that, and people like getting elusive consequences. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was really fun, really interestingly written, very curiously thick book. I also loved, oh god, what was his name? He was like their gymnast captain. I think his name was Bryson or something like that, but he was fantastic. He had my whole heart, and I loved him quite a lot. Number 3, I read Daisy Jones and the Six by Taylor Jenkins Reid. This one everybody loved last year when it came out. I'm just a year late. I mean, I guess 2 years ago at this point, because it is 2021. But this is like a oral history of a fake like Fleetwood Mac-esque band, about kind of taken, it is written like exactly like an oral history. So we've got like all these different band members and roadies telling different parts of the story. They're just telling what they remember, and so you kind of piece together what really happened, and it was really good. And it was just, there were a lot of really good, interesting things said in here. It got a lot of hype when it came out for a reason. It's fantastic. Then number 2 is Wanderers by Chuck Wendig. This is another 2019 release. This one, I'm glad I waited until 2020 to read, because it is about a massive pandemic that goes across kind of the United States and the world, and then also there's a lot of white supremacist groups like ramping up, so it was like very timely read. I enjoy Chuck Wendig's writing a lot. I really like the Heartland trilogy, but Wanderers I think is a whole different beast. It's fantastic. It was so good. Like, it was just, Wendig is never afraid of ramping up to 11, and in this book it's just, he ramps up to 12. It was really fun. And my number 1 book from 2020 is The Troop by Nick Cutter. I read this one right at the beginning of the year, and it was just, oh man. So this is like Lord of the Flies, except for up to 15. It's about a group of Boy Scouts who they go to an island for their kind of Boy Scout trip. A guy shows up, and he's got this weird parasite in him, and then it's like, who's it infecting? What's going on? We do have a Roger. I loved it. I need to read more Nick Cutter. This is still, I know right after I said that, I was like, I need to read this. I was like, I need to read more Nick Cutter, and then I never did. This is still the only one I've ever read. He's also written one about like a cult and stuff like that, which I'm very, very pumped to get to at some point. But this one, honestly, Nick Cutter and The Troop have been kind of popping up as like kind of a new, really, really well-regarded horror author, and it's for a good reason. Okay, top 7 movies. Like I said, I'm just gonna put up posters here. Number 7, I had to give it to fucking Click, because it made me bawl my eyes out. This is a fucking Adam Sandler movie. Okay, so it is about this guy who he just thinks like if he gets through this next little bit, he's gonna be okay. So he ends up going to Best Buy and he finds God in the back, and God gives him a fucking remote, and he ends up rewinding through his whole life, and then I cried because he's mean to his dad. That's that. Number 6, Demonic Toys, which is a old horror B movie. It's hilarious. It is about this, like, it's like a bunch of people get trapped in this warehouse, and there's like a demon living there that like possesses all the toys, and it is so much fun. Like, honestly, it is one of the most fun horror movies I have ever seen. I loved it. There are so many weird one-liners and weird characters. It's so much it's so fun. I love Demonic Toys. Number 5, Texas Chainsaw 3D. I will never hate a Texas Chainsaw movie. I just will love every Texas Chainsaw movie that ever graces my tiny little shitty box TV. This is no exception. It is a kind of a sequel, kind of almost a direct sequel to like the really early movies, where it is about this, it's about a descendant of the Sawyer family, and she ends up inheriting the house, and it turns out that Leatherface is still alive in the basement, and eventually, oh God, it's so much fun. It is so much fun. I enjoyed it so much. Like, I just love the Texas Chainsaw Massacre movies. I'm just gonna love every single one that comes out ever, I think, especially if I love this one enough. Number 4, all the rest of these are horror movies, by the way, is The Shed, which is a Shudder exclusive. It's about this, like, really, it's very time period vague. Like, you get the vibe that it's in like the 80s or 90s, but you don't really know all that well. But it's about this kid who him and his friend, who's named Dahmer, so that's fun, they get pretty much picked on by these jackasses, and then there's a vampire in his shed, and you have to figure out the ethics of feeding people to the vampire in your shed. As you can probably guess from his name, Dahmer is all about eating people, so that's a fun part. I really enjoyed it. I know it didn't get very good reviews, but it was really fun. Like, it was, I don't go to horror movies for these great big gulps of cinema. I go to them for fun, and it was a fun time. Number 3, back to the cannibals. We got Cannibal Holocaust. For the first time, I finally watched Cannibal Holocaust. I will say, yeah, those animal deaths are rough to watch, especially because, you know, they're all real. Like, okay, so this movie was not very ethically made, but it's a really early found footage film, where it's about this documentary crew who went missing in the Amazon rainforest, and they got eaten by indigenous people, but that you see on the tapes that they were just the worst people in the world. Like, they were just awful. So you don't feel bad for them because they deserved it. And you learn that when somebody who is nice meets these cannibals, they're perfectly fine and they're nice and friendly. So that was your own fault, jackasses. But I will say, there are a lot of animal deaths in this movie, and they are all real. This movie was filmed in the 70s, and they had very little regard for the actual human actors, let alone the giant turtle that they made the human actors slaughter on screen. So the animal deaths are kind of rough because they're very gory, they're very real because they are real. So there's that. Number 2, Lords of Chaos. This is a biopic of the Norwegian black metal scene in Norway. It is told from Euronymous' point of view, played by Rory Culkin, I believe. It's a Culkin, I think it's Rory. And I thought it was very fun. It was really, 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 it didn't take itself too seriously. Like, there were a lot of really, like, humorous parts to it that I really enjoyed. I do not know very much about the Norwegian black metal scene. I have not done very much research into it. I have listened to the last podcast on the left episodes about it, but for somebody who did not know anything, it was just a fun time. I know that there are a lot of people who watched it, who are more into it, who got very pissed off about it, but as somebody, it's a fun movie. I enjoyed it. And number 1 is House of a Thousand Corpses. Remember when I said I just like my horror movies to be fun? Because this one is just fun. Like, it is crazy, out there, wild, with so many things. Like, oh, I just loved it. And just the way that it's shot, and all the lights and all the sets, and Captain Spaulding. And I love the whole part in the beginning where they go through like this like tunnel of serial killers, and it's fun. I loved it so much. it was my #1 movie of the year, and I need to watch Rob Zombie's other horror movies because this is the first one I've watched. It was fantastic. And my top album. So I was looking at my Spotify, seeing like what I've listened the most to, and I thought it was gonna be Ministry. But then I ran into another album that I was going through, and I was like, right, I listened to this album enough that even though I didn't start listening to it until the second half of the year, the artist made it on to my top artists of the year. So it's Okay I'm Sick by Badflower. This is a more recent album. I believe it came out in 2019, which is insane for me. It's really fun. I really enjoy it. I mean, I got recommended it because I liked Machine Gun Kelly's new album, and I just really enjoy the raw kind of anger in it. I like it a lot. It's definitely something I would have listened to in high school, and definitely something I still enjoy now. But yeah, those are my top 19 books, movies, album of 2020. That is all I have today. I will talk to you later, and goodbye.